sound a little better? Hello? Alright. Sound a little better? Hello? Alright. Alright, so tonight it's a custom not to learn because of what we call Nitel. So this old custom not to study Torah on this night until, according to most customs, until Chatzos, until midnight. And many people are under the impression that this is a Hasidic custom. The fact of the matter is that it predates the Hasidic movement by a few hundred years. We see it mentioned already in the Maharsha, and it seems like it even in his time was already much older than that. Here I found the source for Nitel in the Sefer Tamim and Hogim. Says in the Lukutim. Can everyone hear now? Can people hear now? Can you hear? Okay. So we have here in the Tamim and Hagim, it says Lukutim Shonim. It's page 2, Tav Kuf, which would be page 500, and it's number Yud Tes 19. Says like this: Tam leminad shenimna min limud leil shechal tekufas tevis. It says that what's the reason why we don't study Torah? We hold back from studying Torah on the night of tekufas tevis, which would seem to mean the Kufas Tevis would seem to mean the winter solstice, but it's a little bit later than that. Two different customs when it is, whether it's December 24th or whether it's January 5th at that night. Neither of those nights are the Tekufa, although it seems that some aspect of the Tekufa falls in some aspect of the Tekufa falls on this night. Alright, so one answer brought in the Likutei HaPardes says like this. It says, Lefisha b'yamim rishonim hartzari Yehudim orvim aleihem u'makamosam b'laylahu. And it says in the old days the anti-Semites would go out on this night and beat up Jews on that night. Anytime they'd find Jews outside or in the street, they would beat them up with very mean, very cruel beatings. And sometimes the Jews would actually die from the beatings. Many of the of the Christians thought that this was a good deed to beat up Jews and kill Jews on this night. L'chein gazru gedolei adar al malamdim bal talmidim bal bnei yeshivas sheyichbadu v'yeshvu bevatehem b'layla zeh v'lo yishtoytu b'chutzes. Therefore, the leaders of the generation decreed on the teachers and the students, and on the yeshiva students, that they should sit still in their homes on this night, and they shouldn't go out in the street. Now, it's a little bit strange because we say that it doesn't seem like that, because we say you can't even study Torah in the house. So it's a question on this reason for the minhag. And not only that, but we don't really have a minhag not to leave the house these days, only not to learn Torah. So we have questions on this reason that's brought in Likutei Pardes, but still, it's one of the reasons. Oy tam, now number Chaf, number 20. Oy tam shenimna melimid b'layel shechal tekufis tevis. Another reason, why don't we study Torah on the night that falls the season of Tevis, the Tekufis Tevis? Shebelayla hazeh nerag b'shmoi hoyu Yeshu shehu klipis arev. On this night there was someone killed, and his name was Yeshu, and he is from the klipa, which is an impure shell of an orev, which is a raven, which is an unkosher bird. The nirmaz shmoi b'Torah, and his name is hinted to in the Torah, v'nokev shem Hashem, and he cursed the name of Hashem, God forbid. Rosh Tevis Yeshu, that stands for the name Yeshu. Ukshtzaref cheshbon Yeshu lecheshbon klipas orev b'gematria sar pach. These are Kabbalistic reasons. It says that when you take the gematria of the name Yeshu and add it to its klipa, which is orev, without the vav, which is a raven, so that's Yeshu is 316, and orev is 272. So that's altogether 588, which is the gematria sar pach. 588, in a simple way, comes out sar pach, which means it doesn't matter. It means the ruler of pach means like I don't know, kol shekosva kadmonim shu shema klovim, which the early Kabbalistic sources say that that's the name of dogs, which is also a sign of impurity and evil. Soid hapach nishbar v'nachnu nimlatnu, and the word pach also means a trap. It's like it says, the trap is broken, and we were saved. He says you can see more about this in the Yalkut Ruveni in Parshas Bereshis. Furthermore, he says the following: Mishamanim and Megidei Emes, She'ira Ma'isias Kamapamim B'Leil Netilasei V'Kirasei Min Ha'olam She'alamdu B'Leil Zeh Uva'kelev Levatehem. And we heard from the true teachers of the Kabbalah Megidei Emes, the true preachers, that there happened many times stories that on this night, when he was taken from the world, that anyone who studies on this night, the dogs come to their house. Minig Yisrael Terahu. And the Jewish custom is Torah. This is quoted from the Regel Yeshara, from the Holy Rebbe from Dinev. I'm assuming it's the Bnei Yissaschar, Zecher Tzadik for Kodesh Levracha. On the bottom, the commentary called Kuntras Acharon speaks a little bit about the a little bit further about the minhag of not learning on Nitel night. It says minhag Yisrael Terahu, that Jewish customs are considered to be Torah, which generally means that if someone is keeping Jewish customs should be considered as strong as keeping halacha. The Jewish customs are very important to keep. Savli Yedid Nefesh Harav Agon Moreno Harav Tzvi Cheskel Shlita Avbezin the Kehilas Plunsk. He said that the Plunsker Rav sent him the following letter concerning this. Shemati Merav Godel Yosis Shahaya Pam Achas B'mei Charev Al Shabbos Kodesh Etzel Admor Hagon Hakadosh Bal Chedushi Arim Megur. The Plunsker Rav said that he heard from one great elderly Rav who was one time in the winter he spent Shabbos by the Holy Rebbe, the Chedushi Arim, the Gera Rebbe, the first Gera Rebbe. It was Haya Ha'esh Noyagin called Futzes Yisrael She'ein London Balel Shechalt Kufas Tavis. And at that night, that Shabbos was the time when among all the Jewish people we don't study Torah, which is Tekufas Tavis. It's time near the beginning of the winter. A few days after the first day of winter. We're not in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch today because it's Nitel Nacht. So the book you wouldn't have here, although you might be able to find on HebrewBooks.org possibly. It's a book called Tamei Menhagim that we're looking at this. So just listen. So this old Rav was by the Tish of the Chedushi Arim, the first Gera Rebbe, and it was the night of Tekufas Tavis when we don't study Torah. So he's eating by the Tish Friday night with the Chassidim, who are by his Tish. Loi Amar Az Divrei Torah. He did not say words of Torah. Divrei Torah. Lufnei Ha'am Kedarkei B'chol Shabbos Kodesh. Every Shabbos he would say Divrei Torah. And this night he did not. Rak Sipur Ki Pam Echad Shal Koimer Echad Ez Hagona Kodesh. Rosh Kol B'nei Hagola, however, Rabbi Yonas and Eibeshitz, Zechron Levracha, he told the following story: that there was a priest who asked the Holy Gaon, the Holy Rebbe, who was the leader of all the Jewish people all around the exile, throughout the whole diaspora, the Rebbe Rabbi Yonas and Eibeshitz, Zechron Levracha, Halo yesh lechem haYehudim eish emchem loimden Torah. I heard that you Jews have a particular night that you do not study Torah. V'chachamim kosvu ki ha'olam oimed al Torah. I heard that your sages, the rabbis of the Talmud, wrote that the world stands on Torah. That only as long as people are studying Torah, that's the only way the world can exist. So if that's true, how does the world exist during these times? And the holy Rebbe Rabbi Yonason answered him, Ki minig Yisrael Torah, that Jewish customs are Torah. The fact that they're not studying Torah that evening, that itself is Torah. And this is what the world is standing on. It seems though that the Rebbe Björnson was saying this only to only saying this is kind of a humorous aspect, and the real answer is that the world that he writes elsewhere is that the world is round, and there are people in different parts of the world studying Torah. So, and not all the places they have a custom and so forth. So, meaning the custom is, according to most versions of the custom, is from night until midnight, from nightfall until midnight. So there are other parts of the world where it is a time when you can study Torah, and that's how the world continues to exist. But still, the joke is a serious joke, meaning that it's also true that the Jewish custom is also Torah. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zechron Levracha, in his book Hayom Yom, he says that the custom among the Chabad Hasidim is only until Chatzos. And he said that the Rebbe Rashab from Lubavitch was very upset at people who could not hold back from studying Torah on this night. So that's why we're not really studying Torah tonight. We're discussing the custom, why we don't, and we can tell stories and discuss other things. There are many different customs of what was done on this night, or is done on this night. In the old days, they didn't have toilet paper like we have today. So some but rather they would cut up newspapers and things for toilet paper, or whatever they could find, and they would set up the toilet paper for the whole year on this night. Later on, when they had toilet paper ready, but they didn't have the cut up toilet paper, people would cut up the toilet paper for Shabbos tonight. In many communities, it's a custom to play cards or do other things tonight, or to read secular books. The Lubavitcher Rebbe would sew on this night. There are different customs of which night it should be, and they seem to reflect the customs of the country they're living in, or where they're coming from. So generally, those who came from Catholic countries, and I guess to a lesser extent Protestant countries, because there weren't so many Eastern European countries that were Protestant, they would keep it on December 24th. And in the Eastern Orthodox countries, like Russia and Romania, they would keep it on Lithuania and so forth. They would keep this on tonight on the 5th of January, because that's when the 6th of January is when the Eastern Orthodox Church is celebrating their Christmas. There are other reasons why we're not studying. Some say it's the danger of the Tekufa, but it has nothing to do with Christmas. But most people saying that it has some connection to the Christian observance of Christmas. In certain communities, it was customary to be strict on both nights of Nitel. For example, the Vishnitzer Chassidim kept both nights of Nitel. Vishnitz is on the border of Romania and Hungary, and you had both Catholics and Eastern Orthodox. So that's one of the reasons. In Breslov, also they're keeping both nights because in Breslov, many Breslov Chassidim, there's really no specific minhagim for Breslov, but many Breslov Chassidim had the minhag to keep both nights. In Hayom Yom that I mentioned before, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said the reason why we don't study this night is so we should not be moisef chiyus, he says, in order not to add livelihood, not to add life to the klipas, as we mentioned before, the klipa of Yeshu. And so the study of Torah is something that's so powerful that it gives that power, and many explain that that's one of the reasons. But another reason some sources mention, seems from the Chassam Sofer, was that the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox have a midnight mass on Christmas Eve, and it would look bad that it's just the opposite. The other way we're saying that no, they'll think that if we add something good to the world by studying Torah, that they will say that it's because of their idolatry that the Torah study is that the world is better. But then we have the opposite version, is that the Chassam Sofer says that because the Christians are up at midnight, we should also be up at midnight. They're doing their idolatry, and we should be up studying Torah. You can't make a decree that we should be doing that, so instead, the decree that we should not study Torah until midnight, and then at midnight we do study Torah. Because we want to fulfill the mitzvah of studying Torah every night. Many people make fun of this custom, many Jews make fun of this custom, and a lot of them will say it's a Hasidic custom. Even if it is, it's not something to make fun of. But the fact of the matter is, like I mentioned, it predates the Hasidic movement. We find it already in the Maharsha, and we find it's quoted, mentioned by the Rebbe Yonasan, mentioned by Chassam Sofer, and other non-Hasidic Gedolim. The Chassam Sofer was certainly influenced by the Hasidic movement. He was a student of the Haflah, who was a Hasidic Rebbe, but still, Sof Kol Sof, he davened Nusach Ashkenaz. The Chassam Sofer is Chassid Galenim Kol Somein. And I've heard that in the Mir Yeshiva, they keep this custom not to study Torah on the night of Nitel. Now, if someone is not from Eastern European background, a Sephardic Jew or a Yekka, I don't know if the Yekkas had this minhag. For sure, the Sephardim from Middle Eastern Sephardim did not have this minhag because they not living in Christian countries. So, although the Spanish Jews, at one point did, I'm not sure exactly what the custom was there, but for sure it's an old custom. I was speaking to one great rabbi that I'm friendly with, and I speak to often about this issue, and he said that he felt that the reason was because just like we have today, that already in the times of the Talmud, there's such a thing that on the yard side of a tzaddik, we study Torah in his honor. And so we wanted to not only show that we're not studying Torah in honor of Yeshu, even though we know the Talmud Hagen mentions that it's the day he died, so maybe it's a different Yeshu, it might not be, but the Christians celebrate it as his birthday, so it's very difficult to understand. But that the reason for the minhag was that in the early days, in the times of the Second Temple, shortly after Yeshu was killed, that we wanted to see which people were secretly followers of Yeshu. So they said no one should go out and study Torah, and if the people they saw going out and studying Torah on this night, they would know that they were from his students. It's not so clear, that's an interesting idea that this rabbi came up with, and certainly similar to what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. But he admits this is his own novel idea, but he said it's what makes sense. So we have a question here. So it says, I thought you're not supposed to change your ways because of the Gentiles. So first of all, that means copying the Gentiles, not doing something to be different than the Gentiles. It's only doing something that's the same as the Gentiles. It's first of all. That's the simple answer. But then the second thing that I can say is that just what I said, that this reason that this one rabbi told me would have nothing to do with Gentiles, because it really in that time had to do with the Jewish followers of Yeshua. Perhaps even long before even before the time when the Christians even say that Jesus was even born. Abandon your ways because of Gentiles. It's not abandoning ways. Again, the whole thing that we said was like the Rabbi Yonason said, is Meaning of Nitel Torah. This is an old Jewish custom, and many say that the custom really has nothing to do with Christmas. That it's a custom that has to do with Tekufas Tevis, and there were other issues, both Kabbalistic issues and so forth. The kippah comes from copying the Catholics. It's told several times of Orthodox rabbis, not the other way around. The Catholics copy the Jews. The Jews took this from the Catholics. I never heard that. I've heard other things, but I never heard that the kippah comes from the Catholics. So it's an interesting idea. I'm curious where that source is from, but I'd never heard such a thing. There's a lot of things I haven't heard, but I've heard other things. Just interesting. So you're mentioning the Catholics, so it's worthwhile to talk a little bit about the history. Since we're not allowed to study Torah tonight, we can talk a little bit about the history of Christianity and also of Jewish-Christian relations, and also why Judaism is not Christianity and why Christianity is not Judaism, which are very important things, because there's a lot of misinformation both about Judaism and about Christianity, and there are a lot of groups that try to mix the two together, either by making Jews into Christians or making Christians more Jewish without becoming fully Jewish, meaning maintaining their Christianity but adopting Jewish customs, and both are very poisonous, and both contradict both Judaism and Christianity. But first is this interesting story that I want to share that I heard from Rav Moshe Weinberger Shlita, who was one of the more popular rabbis in the 5 towns of Long Island. He has a big shul in Woodmere, Long Island, and he was my Rebbe in high school. And he's like a big, popular Hasidic style Rebbe in the modern world. So Rabbi Weinberger was a student of one of the leading rabbis of the modern Orthodox world, perhaps the greatest rabbi of the modern Orthodox movement was Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik of blessed memory, who was the chief rabbi of the modern Orthodox community of Boston. You had other great rabbis in Boston. Rabbi Mordechai Savitsky, Zecher Tzadok Livracha, was the chief rabbi of the ultra-Orthodox community of Boston, and Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Horowitz of blessed memory was the Hasidic Grand Rabbi of Boston. So anyway, Rabbi Soloveitchik was from the illustrious Brisker dynasty, although he changed many of his ways politically and so forth from the brisk path, but he was still a student of the brisker path in Torah study and a sign of that illustrious dynasty. So Rabbi Soloveitchik, anyway, one thing that he did that was more modern than most other great rabbis, although it didn't diminish his greatness as a rabbi, he was still one of the greatest rabbis that we had in the 20th century. So one thing which we see was similar to the Rebbe Yonason hundreds of years earlier was that he did engage in interfaith dialogue. The difference was by the Rebbe Yonason, it would have probably been a danger, physical, direct threat to the Jewish community if he didn't engage in this dialogue. And in Rabbi Soloveitchik's time, it was not so direct a threat. Anyway, there was a story that he was sitting at a banquet with the Archbishop, the Cardinal of Boston. I saw his name a little while and I tried to remember the name, and now I've forgotten it. I'll get that in a second. It was Richard J. I'll find it now on Google because I looked it up earlier and now I forgot it. Well, my computer's a little bit slow right now, but once I find it, he passed away in the 1970s, and he wrote many books on Catholicism. Surprised I forgot this because I specifically looked it up earlier. Oh, hold on a second, I want to apologize for this. So Richard Cushing was the Richard J. Cushing at the time was the bishop, cardinal of Boston, the Archdiocese of Boston, and the two of them was Rabbi Soloveitchik was sitting at a banquet together with Cardinal Cushing, who wrote many books. He was one of the leaders of the Catholic Church in the 1950s and 60s, and this was in the late 60s, and Cardinal Cushing said to Rabbi Soloveitchik, I think I'm getting scared because my days are numbered. And Rabbi Soloveitchik said, no, don't worry, you should have a nice long life, don't worry about it. And Cardinal Cushing said, no, Rabbi, I'm very worried, and but I'm coming at peace with my time being up soon. But I have one thing that I'm looking forward to finding out when my time comes. And Rabbi Soloveitchik said, what's that, Cardinal? And Cardinal Cushing said, I can't wait to see, are we right, or are you guys right? Now Rabbi Soloveitchik, a few days later, he was in the Yeshiva University in Manhattan, where he served as Rosh Yeshiva, and he said that at that point, he told the boys, and Rabbi Weinberger was one of the students there at the time, he said, Rabbi Weinberger is younger than that, so it must have been that he told the story years later. It doesn't make sense. It should be, because Rabbi Weinberger would probably been in high school at that time. So I'm not sure. It must have been he retold the story years later. Anyway, and maybe he told the story over a few times. So Rabbi Soloveitchik said to his students when he retold the story that he lost all respect for Cardinal Cushing at that time, because here if you would ask the simplest Jew in Brisk, which is where Rabbi Soloveitchik's family came from in Lithuania, not the great rabbis, a simple shoemaker. Do you have any, maybe even someone who wasn't so religious, but he was a Jew? You ask him, do you have a doubt in your mind? Maybe we are right, the Torah is true, or maybe those guys down the block in the cathedral, maybe they're right. He would spit on the floor and say, God forbid, what kind of doubt in my mind would I have? Of course the Torah is true. I could never have a doubt from that. And yet here you have a leader of the Catholic Church, not only a priest, not only a bishop, but a cardinal, one step away from being the Pope. And he said he had a doubt in his mind whether or not the Catholics were right or the Jews were right. If you see in Cardinal Cushing's path, maybe the Protestants were right. He was not very sure of his path. It was very interesting he was a Catholic bishop, a Catholic cardinal, and he actually encouraged his parishioners to go to hear Billy Graham at one of his revivals, and that's here Billy Graham, I think, is Baptist, and the Cardinal Cushing, Catholic. He's telling him, go, you'll be inspired by this. So we saw he wasn't someone who was so strong in his faith of what he was, but was more ecumenical type. So the we see that this is something, a Jew is sure, a real authentic Torah true Jew, even someone who's not such a scholar, but he's dedicated to Almighty, he's not going to have such a silly doubt. And yet someone who dedicated his whole life with self-sacrifice, we assume that he did as he said. We maybe assume that Catholics, the priest is supposed to be celibate, all this stuff, and yet he had a doubt in his mind whether or not his religion was true. And yet, so it should be a lesson for us. Here we're all trying. So many Jews are trying to copy non-Jewish things. So many Jews get caught up into falsehoods of these Christian missionaries who are trying to cloak Christianity in a Jewish form and catch Jewish souls. And yet here you have a cardinal who wasn't sure of what his own religion. There's it's very there's other stories we could share about this. But it's something that we have to be very mindful of and careful of. But also the thing is that the rest of the world, they look up to us. We all know Rabbi Twersky, Rabbi Abraham J. Twersky. He just turned 80 years old. He should be blessed with many more years. Rabbi Twersky works a lot with drug addicts and alcoholics and so forth, with AA. He did work together with the late Charles Schultz, who made the Peanuts cartoons, and with other people, and he's helping all kinds of people, not only Jewish people, anybody who wants to overcome addictions and so forth. So he had one of his patients. He's also an MD, not only PhD but also MD, Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rabbi Tversky, Rabbi Dr. Tversky, and Rabbi Tversky. He had one of his patients with a Catholic priest, and the priest said to him, "I have a major problem because he was a recovering alcoholic, and yet the Catholic liturgy has, as part of their sacrament, is drinking wine. So what is he supposed to do if the sacrament is to drink wine, and yet he's not allowed to drink wine because he's an alcoholic? So recovering alcoholic. So Rabbi Tversky said, I'm not a posek, I'm not a decider of law, not in my religion and certainly not in yours. But by us Jews, if someone can't drink wine for the 4 cups on Passover, they could drink grape juice. So maybe ask someone who's bigger than you if that's okay." So the priest asked his bishop, the rabbi told me that if by the Jews, they're not drinking wine, they could drink grape juice. So could I do that too? So the bishop asked the cardinal. The cardinal didn't know, so he asked the Pope. And the Pope said, "Well, if that's what the Jews do, then it's okay, because all of our stuff comes from them." So similarly, I heard I heard a story of similarly. It was an imam who he said that when he's having trouble understanding the Sharia law, he calls an Orthodox rabbi, and he asks, "Well, what's the Jewish law?" And then from there he can understand his own religion, because all of the others are just copycats of the original Torah. Even though we know that the Christianity messes up in matters of theology, and Islam messes up in matters of historical facts. Whereas the Torah is perfect. That's not to say Judaism might have a lot of problems. The problems are when we don't follow the Torah. But but the Torah is perfect. And Torah Judaism is perfect, but much of Judaism occasionally strays away from Torah, even in Orthodox circles, to a lesser extent than the other circles. But no one's perfect. Only God is perfect, and His Torah is perfect. We have to understand and be very careful. We have to be thankful that we have authentic Torah life. I was once in Idaho and visiting my wife's family, and we had there. We happened to meet a couple, and the husband was wearing tzitzis and a yarmulke. Not only had tzitzis, he had the baggage on top of his shirt, underneath a vest, and I was talking to him, and he told me he's the rabbi of the town. I look up in the phone book, the only synagogue, what they call a Messianic synagogue, which is of course not a synagogue, it's rather a Christian church. But this fellow was a very different type. He told me, first of all, we found out he wasn't really Jewish. His mother wasn't Jewish. His father's father was Jewish. And he told us that he wanted, really he and his wife, they read the Bible, they saw what went on the church, had nothing to do with the Bible. And they wanted to really keep the Bible. They decided they wanted to be Jewish. So they call up Eshet Torah in Israel. They said, "I want to study with you guys. I want to learn about Judaism." Eshet Torah told them that if your mother's not Jewish, you're not Jewish. So he didn't know what to do. So he started his own crazy understanding of Judaism. Even though he's not Jewish, he could convert and become an authentic Jew, but they didn't bring him close to that. And instead, because they didn't teach him authentic Torah, he got misled into Messianic Judaism. And he made up his own path, but different than most Messianic Jews, because most Messianic Jews are claiming to be like Karaite or Sadducees, that they don't not accepting the holy oral Torah. And the this fellow, he claimed that Jesus wanted to follow the rabbis, and so he said he had to follow the rabbis. It wasn't clear whether or not this person believed Jesus was God or even the Messiah, or whether he was just to him a rabbi. The thing is, in authentic Judaism, he's not even a rabbi. He's nothing. We don't have any type of respect for this character. Although we are respectful to Christian people and we get along with them, we only wish them well and live in peace with them. And we do believe that God has mercy on people even if they're walking in falsehood and they don't know any better. They're still in the grace of God as long as they're good people and they follow the 7 laws of Noah and so forth. But so this person is a very sincere person, but he's totally lost. And he said not only that, but that he made himself a rabbi. I don't know, and it was kind of silly, the whole thing. He was a pastor of a church group that he had in his house, and they would sit and read the Art Scroll Chumash, and every week the Parsha. And he said that he had about 20 or 30 people coming to his group. He said none of them were Jewish. He said one time on Yom Kippur, a Jewish lady came in. She was Reformed Jewish, and she said it was too religious for her, so she left and went somewhere else. But 40 miles away, I don't know, 20 miles, like Pocatello, there was a little Reform group that was there in Pocatello. And he told me, he said that this fellow, he said that he had to go away because his father was sick. Had to go out of town to St. Louis. And when he came back, someone had come into his congregation and made himself a pastor and took away all the congregants. And he said that the main schism theologically between him and this other pastor was that the other pastor was a more, we call, unfortunately, mainstream, what they call messianic, really Christian who follows some Jewish customs. And this fellow, he said that he wanted to follow the rabbinical law, because he quoted a verse from Matthew saying the scribes and Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses. And he said, therefore, for example, the big schism in practice came because he wanted to follow the Jewish calendar that Hillel Hasheni made, and the other fellow wanted to be Mekadesh the Chodesh himself, decide the calendar on his own, and the authentic Jewish calendar said it was a leap year, and this fellow said he determined, looking at the barley crop and so forth, it wasn't a leap year. And so there was a month when we were celebrating Purim, and this other fellow and his family were celebrating Purim. All the other people were celebrating Passover. And he told us a few other interesting things. He said he had 2 sons. He said he had a problem. One of his sons had a girlfriend, and he didn't like that. He wanted she should go out, he should find a shidduch, and not have a girlfriend, but go through courtship. And he said that the problem was that this girl, she wasn't part of their faith. But the thing was, it's only his family who's following this particular type of Christianity where they follow aspects of rabbinical Judaism, but not fully, because he said he doesn't know shechita, all kinds of. He told me that he shechs buffaloes out there in Idaho, and all kinds of silly things. He told me I should speak to the people in Albertsons, which is this big supermarket there, because they had the little kosher section that had a jar of gefilte fish for like $15, and some matzah for like $10, and a little bottle of Kedem grape juice for $8. And they said it's a problem because right in the same aisle are the pickled pig's feet in a jar. I said it's really no problem to have the gefilte fish in a jar in the same aisle with the pig's feet in the jar. The pig's feet are not in the kosher section, and anyway, they really were not some of the Jewish people in the community there. I didn't know if there was really anyone who kept kosher there in the whole city, second largest city in Idaho. So this fellow, he told me he was very upset. This one son had a girlfriend and so forth, and the other son, he said he's more with the Lord. I don't have to tell him to put on his tzitzit. That's what he said. We see there's a big hypocrisy with these messianic groups. Most of them are just ignorant, but some of them are outright malicious. I work in a prison once a week. I have a contract with the federal prison, and there's a big problem with the messianic who are not Jewish, most of them, trying to catch Jewish souls and bring them into their group. And and not only that, but it causes problems for the Jewish inmates. For example, they said on Passover, there's a certain budget for Passover meals, for Passover Seder and so forth. And at the Jewish Passover Seder, maybe there was, 8, 9 people. There was one other person who's by himself, and he had his own Seder. He managed to get, he's a very kosher person, and a very frum person, and he has a lot of chumras, and he got whatever he needed for his Seder. He doesn't eat very much, but he had matzah from Satmar and so forth, and other things were sent to him, also fish, all kinds of things, and the kosher the Pesach was sent from the Satmar community, and he shared it with the rest of the community too. And the problem was with the Messianics, they had their Seder, and they had about 100 people at their Seder. And also all this food that was really designated for the Jewish people and in the budget, many non-Jews had a separate service with their Seder. And then they said that during the week of Passover, even the next day, might have been Yontiv, the prison does supply special Pesach meals, and the whole thing, wrapped up in like TV dinner, shelf-stable meals. So the Jewish people were getting their Passover meals, and one of these Messianic Christians who were not really Jewish, but who claimed to be Jewish, they saw he was taking some macaroni salad that was, of course, not kosher for Passover. And when they confronted him about it, he said, "Well, that's just rabbinical." Which doesn't make sense because macaroni is definitely chometz doraisa. It's not the rabbanan. It's definitely Torah prohibition to eat pasta, macaroni on Pesach. But meanwhile, they're saying they're only following rabbinical law. I'm not talking about this fellow in Idaho. We're talking about the community in the prison and other communities. They say they only follow rabbinical law, and yet they wear yarmulkes, and yet they celebrate Hanukkah, which is rabbinical. Okay, you could say that Jesus also celebrated Hanukkah. It says in the book of John that he went to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Dedication. So what we see then That you can't say things are only rabbinical. And the thing is that the things that they say are only rabbinical, most of them are biblical, and then the things that they follow are mostly rabbinical. They have a siddur, and it has lachadodi, which is much later. It's from only 400 years ago, and it's in their siddur, and they're claiming they're not following rabbinical things. The reason is, obviously, it's that they're totally false, and so that's a different thing, but many people get misled by them. And then this other fellow, he means well, he really probably would have been Jewish if someone would have brought him in and told him how to become a real Jew, and told him the falsehood of all the things he believed. I think he probably would have come to the truth. The problem is that we're not spreading the truth, and it's probably, of course, everyone has free will. They can do whatever they want. It's a free country. There's freedom of religion. But really, you can neither be authentically Jewish with incorporating Christian ideas, incorporating any respect for any form of Jesus, whether you want to call him Yeshu or Yahusha or whatever they call him, or Yeshua, all these, it doesn't matter. We don't, Jewish people do not have any respect for him, who is, of course, goes without saying, he wasn't God, and he wasn't the Messiah, but he wasn't a prophet, and he wasn't even a rabbi, he wasn't even such a great person. We see, like the Talmud in Hagim says, is a klipa Yeshu. Again, we still, it doesn't mean anything negative to Christian people. They're good people, and God loves them, and they're nice people. But still, it's a big problem. And on the other hand, also, you can't really be Christian and incorporate Jewish things. It's a contradiction on both sides. It's a contradiction to Judaism for sure. And if you ask, it's hard to define anything for Christianity because there's so many different denominations. Anyone can make up their own denomination. But for most mainstream, when I say Orthodox Christians, I don't mean Eastern Orthodox. I mean Orthodox Christianity, whether it's Catholic, Protestant, Eastern Orthodox, anything. Incorporating Judaizing was always traditionally, historically looked down upon and considered heretical in the church, for many reasons. And really, that's the way it's supposed to be. But ultimately, for someone to say they want to do mitzvahs, there's only one way to do it, and that is through authentic Judaism. You cannot make up your own religion and incorporate the Jewish mitzvahs into it. That is not what's pleasing to God. What's pleasing to God is either, for sure, Jewish people have to keep the Torah. That's without a question. And the non-Jewish people have to keep the 7 laws of Noah. That's with no question. The question is, can non-Jewish people add more mitzvahs? Now, for sure, there's no question that they can convert to Judaism if they want to, but they're not obligated to, but they can do it. But they have to abandon every other religion and only be dedicated to one God and to the Torah and to the sages of the Talmud of all the and throughout all the generations of authentic Judaism. And without that, it's not a conversion, and the person that's the only way to become Jewish. But what about someone who wants to remain a Noahide but wants to keep more mitzvahs? Technically, they're allowed to do it only if they make recognizing that they're not obligated to do it because they're not Jewish, but only that they want to show honor to God in the way that God asked the Jewish people to do. That's okay, according to Maimonides and according to Talmud, that it's okay for a non-Jewish person to keep other mitzvahs, except for there's a question about Shabbos, and a question about Tefillin, but even with the question, there are those who say it's okay, but if you don't want the question, just become Jewish. And if you say it's too hard, it's not too hard. It's just, there are challenges, because if it means that much to you spiritually, you'll get up, you'll move anywhere and do anything if that's what is in your heart that you need to do. Because you don't need to do it. It's up to you if you want to do it, and it's a good thing. But you don't have to do it. If you're not born Jewish. If you're born Jewish, you're stuck. You don't have a choice. You can't leave. And a Jew who leaves Judaism, first of all, there's nothing wrong with being a Gentile. But there's something very wrong with being a non-religious Jew. And many Jews, even they're not religious, wrongly look down upon Gentiles, and that is not the Torah way. But they should know, if they're not observant of Judaism, they're much, 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 much worse than the Gentile. Because really there's nothing wrong with being a Gentile, but there's something horribly wrong with a Jew not being religious. And if you want to go by that opinion, which is the overwhelming opinion, although there are many great rabbis who disagree, that a non-Jew cannot keep the Sabbath. So we have to understand how important it is for a Jew to keep the Sabbath. What a privilege it is that we can keep the Sabbath. We can keep Shabbos. You know, my wife, she converted to Judaism, and she said that she that she cried every week when she had to break the Sabbath, and it caused her so much pain. And so many Jews, they don't take this treasure that we have of the privilege of keeping Shabbos. And the thing is, someone says, I like the way you said stuck. This is a blessing. The Torah says, I set before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing is if you keep the word of God, and the curse is if you don't keep it. And so, for us who are happy and proud and a tremendous joy to be Jews, whether we chose it or whether we came to it or whether we're born with it, either way we're stuck with it, but we're happy to be stuck with it. It is a blessing. But for those who do not keep, even they say that they're happy to be Jewish, that's not what it means to be Jewish. That person who is not keeping the Torah, who doesn't believe in the Torah, who no one keeps it perfectly, we have to believe, and we have to be penitent, and we have to be humble before God. Then it's good. If not, if a person is arrogant, it's a pain. So, no one person converted, he refused to break Shabbat even though he's told to. It was too painful and he knew he was already a Jewish soul. I know someone like that too. And it's very unfortunate that there's so little respect for converts. It's such a tremendous holy thing that we have converts in our midst. Anyway, really, even someone before they convert, for sure, I would say someone, even though this is also controversial, but I know Rabbi Lev from Moshe Matisyahu in Israel, he said that if someone converts, let's say conservatively, went to mikveh, they should keep Shabbos. Now they have to convert again. The conversion isn't good enough, but okay, I have to go now because I have to go pick someone up from the bus. It was a very interesting discussion tonight. I'll give another minute or two if anyone has any questions, but really we should try to avoid any questions in Jewish law or anything, but if there's anything about what we discussed, particularly questions about Christianity and Judaism, that would be something apropos to speak about tonight. And I would suggest people tonight, if like right now on Radio Torah, we have a class from Rabbi Tovia Singer, and this is something that's probably a very good thing to listen to tonight. Rabbi Singer's classes, and once that's over, you can go to simpletoremember.com and listen to all of his classes. They're very interesting and very entertaining, much more entertaining than me, and very educational and informational, also more than what I have to offer. So it's something that you can take advantage of tonight. And I'll tell you, if you have the custom to, a lot of people say that on the night when you're not supposed to learn Torah, they have the biggest desire to learn Torah. Every other night they want to play video games and watch movies. Tonight they want to learn Torah, and I think even with our discussion, I might have touched a little bit on Torah to the point it wasn't really allowed according to the custom. But if you like to play video games, you like to watch movies, as long as a clean movie, tonight is the night to do it. And you like to play cards or play board games, whatever it is, tonight is a very good night to be doing that, because it's custom not to study Torah. But after midnight, like in Richmond, midnight is around 12:15 or so, that would be the time to go and study Torah. Alright, you should have a good night, only good things, and we should all be safe and protected. Alright, I'll see you again tomorrow night after Rabbi Meza's class. We have a little class on the Parsha. We'll learn a little bit of the Zohar on the Parsha, and we will learn a little bit from the Holy Rebbe Reb Zusha, whose yahrzeit is tomorrow night. Okay.